The three equations we have here in black boxes are the inverses of the equations we started out with. I've written out the steps to find each of these inverse functions, and there's one important thing I'd like you to notice. To indicate the point at which we switch from modifying the original function to modifying the inverse function, I changed colors. So the first two steps of each equation are still working with the original functions. Then at the point where we switch the position of x and y, we've changed the equation to be the inverse function. All of the work with the inverse function for each of these is in purple. The actual steps that we've gone through when modifying either the original function or the inverse function are pretty standard algebra. They're things that you learned about very early on in this course. Why don't we take a look at this middle one just as an example? As we discussed earlier, the first thing that I did was switch from calling this g of x to calling it y, just so that when we're moving things around, it's easy to tell what that variable actually is. We won't get it confused with anything. Then, to change from the original function to the inverse, I just switch the spots of x and y. So instead of y equals 1/4 times x minus 9, we have x equals 1/4 times y minus 9. From there, I multiply both sides by 4, and then add a 9 to both sides to get y by itself. Since I want g inverse of x on the left side of the equation, since that's our standard function notation, I just took one extra step to switch the sides of the equation so that y was on the left instead of on the right. That gave us a final answer of g inverse of x equals 4x plus 9. The other two answers we ended up with were f inverse of x equals x minus 1 and h inverse of x equals the cube root of x. Now instead of writing cube root x, you could of course have written x to the 1/3 power instead. Either way is correct. I hope this extra practice with inverse functions helped you feel a bit more comfortable with the process we have to go through for finding them.